Hello. I do see some new faces, so you get to hear my spiel over and over and over. And if I skip something, some of you can tell me what I skipped because you've been here a lot, and I appreciate that. So my name is Elizabeth Eubanks, and I am the lead gardener at From the Ground Up Community Garden. So thanks so much for coming out. Woohoo. I really do appreciate y'all being here because this is kind of one of my, well, it is. Like, I love the music, but I love stories, and I love, the slam's fun, competition's okay, but I love the stories. So a little bit about the garden. We are basically sustained by Innisfree Hotels. We're part of the Hive, which is their corporate social responsibility program. So we're super happy and pleased to have them. And they are basically in charge and funding this event, along with UWF, University of West Florida's Community Garden, and Kugelman Honors Program. So we're super happy to have UWF as a partner as well. And then it's kind of really cool because we have Becca here, and Becca Fritillary. That's the butterfly if you don't know, but anyway, Becca runs the community garden at Everman, so I can say that a lot of the local community gardens are well represented this evening, but we do appreciate UWF and that partnership, and of course Innisfree Hotels. So the deal with the garden is that Andrew is right there, basically run the garden, and then my husband Rob is the aesthetics director. He's the one with the pea shirt. You can make jokes if you want, but he does have a green pea shirt. And then over here we have Aiden O'Daniel, who's almost getting ready to be Aiden who? Witt. O'Daniel, I don't know, you should get him to. Anyway, Aiden's getting married in a little bit over a month here, so we're super excited. Aiden is our marketing, she's our events coordinator, and then Carly is over there. These are both of our judges, by the way. They're from Be Loud Marketing, and then Carly is doing some of our social media posts, and then a lot for Innisfree as well. So we're happy to have them out here as well, and they are part of the garden. So Andrew and Andrew, much more than me these days, it seems, is out here about 20 to 25 hours a week. And we are usually here Tuesday and Friday mornings, Wednesday and Thursday evenings. And people can just come and help. We do take school groups. I'm a certified teacher. I have a master's in education. So we do take school groups. We take volunteer groups. A really cool, fun one that UWF does is Jasara Norton actually teaches English, but she brings the class. I actually go teach the class and talk once, and then it's a research project. So they're researching community gardens. So then they come out here and I give them a little tour and they basically help. So that's really exciting. So lots of education here. Our goals basically are, number one is community. Number two is education. And I say K through gray or cradle through grave. So anybody and everybody. And organized education, whereas classes come in, or just general volunteers come in that we just teach and learn with. And learn from each other, really. And then the third one is actually organic gardening. The fourth is visual and performing arts. And then the fifth, I just rep right back to community. So that's kind of what we're all about. We are sustained by Innisfree, but it is our goal to eventually say, we don't need this, like, go ahead and we'll share the money with somebody else and we'll still keep your name, but we do want to sustain ourselves and be a community garden that is sustained. So we do that by having concerts. We have this event. We ask for donations for this. We don't need them. I mean, we appreciate them, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. We have merchandise that we're selling. So all of that kind of stuff. The cool thing about this event as well, the other partnership with UWF, is we have Joshua Jacobs here, and UWF has basically hired him to record the event. So we are recording all of them. I'm making little clips here and there, and probably will put a full one together in an hour, but I'm doing some random clips as we go on now. So I think that's most things about the garden. As far as maintenance, do be mindful it is a working garden. There might be ants or whatnot. The bathroom is at the police station across the street. We have tons of events coming up. We have one tomorrow night, Music Under the Stars. We have a six-piece jazz band, John Milham, and he's bringing people from New Orleans to Pensacola to come perform. And this will be like the largest band we've had on the stage. So if you want, please do come out tomorrow night. That starts at 6:30, I believe. our schedule is full almost every weekend, so please do check Facebook and come see us. And the other thing that we have, but it's kind of locked off right now, we have a CSA program, and that's Community Supported Agriculture. We call them Friends of the Garden, and they pay a lump sum once a year, and then we pack boxes for them. And like tonight, we packed 4 boxes. So T is a faithful member for a very long time, so we appreciate that. And again, we have very few memberships because we do share the food with those volunteers and students that come in. So we don't do a lot of that, but some of it. I think I've covered everything. Yeah. So bathroom across the street. My name's Elizabeth. I'm so excited and I'm really thrilled. This is the first time that we've had a guest speaker, but I'm going to let Becca introduce you to her. I'm going to let Becca introduce her to you. And Becca is lovely. She's a friend and a partner in the community gardening world. And she's an amazing storyteller and actress and singer as well. So we never know what's going to happen in between these stories with Becca around. So stay tuned for that. So Becca, thank you.
I need a band to sing a song. Okay, so one thing you didn't mention, Elizabeth, I think it's October 20th. The Scottish play is going to be here with the Scottish play with Errant Knavery. So it will be Shakespeare Under the Stars. Yes, October 20th. I have it right? Do I?
It's a Sunday. Yep.
So a Sunday. So yes, so very exciting. Lots of things going on. But what's happening tonight is Ms. Pat Nease has joined us from Panama City, where she is living in an RV. Yay! Anyway, she's been doing this for about 35 years. She has been named Florida's champion liar 3 years now. Paper thoughts. At least that's what she says. It was on her website, you know. Thank you. What else? I'm trying to think. Past president of the Florida Storytellers Association, and it has been so nice just talking to you, Pat. And these are just things I saw on your website, so I thought I would throw it out there. And I'm really excited about the story you're going to tell us. I don't know what it's going to be, but paper thoughts. If you have paper thoughts, you don't want me to read any now, do you?
Not yet, but you can talk about it because I forgot.
Okay. So throughout the night, a lot of you should have gotten these. I heard somebody wrote something so scary it keeps her up at night. I probably will not read that one. But just write little things, little spooky thoughts or things down on these little papers, and in between stories, we'll talk about them and read them and so forth. Okay? So without any further ado, take it away, Pat.
Well, this is just an enchanting place. I had no idea it was here. And I drove around trying to figure out where do I park. And then I just thought, I'm just going to drive over the grass and park. So I did. So, all right. So here I am. Yeah, we are living in an RV. Our house is still under reconstruction from Hurricane Michael. I had been promised I'd be in by June. No later than July. Don't worry, it'll be August. For sure, September. So here I am, still working on it. So yes, I did not ever intend, I didn't grow up and say, when I grow up, I'm going to be a storyteller. I didn't know there was such a thing. I didn't know people could actually earn a living, and some do right well, going around and telling stories. Who knew? But it is certainly fun. And I retired from teaching about 10 years ago, and it has really given me a chance to go out and do things I couldn't do while enclosed in a classroom. I did find that teaching, and I told Becca this, when I was teaching, that if you could put something in a story form, if you could make it a story, people remember. And then I found out later they have done all kinds of research of how the human brain works. And it works through stories. We remember with stories. So we have attorneys and we have car salesmen and we have all kinds of people that come and take storytelling classes because they have learned that if they can put something as a story, then it resonates and people remember and they give it some thought. So it's been a really fun thing to do, and I am so thankful to have that chance to be here. So, how many of you have signed up now to tell a scary story tonight or a spooky thing? I only see 2 hands. That is not going to work. You guys have watched TV, you have been on camping trips, you have heard things, you have felt times when you were a little bit spooked, when that hair on the back of your head went up a little bit. When I knew I was coming here, I asked my storytelling friends, I said, all right, what do you consider spooky? And this one woman said, well, it's when you're in the house by yourself and you hear the commode flush upstairs. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So you be thinking now, because you've got those things. You've got those experiences. Elizabeth wanted me to talk a little bit about storytelling, but I think the best thing to do is just tell a story. Don't you think? Yeah. And it's true. I am following the guidelines, but it's not 7 minutes. It might be a little longer, not much. Or 5 minutes, or whatever yours is. Ho ho! All right. True. I may be a champion liar, but this is the truth. And remind me afterwards to tell you about liars contest, because that would be a fun thing to have here, Elizabeth, as well. Yeah, a liars contest. Yeah. Okay. So I'm driving back from the Tampa Storytelling Festival, and I'm driving back on what I call the Coast Road. It's that 1927-98 goes through Perry and comes down through, Chiefland and all that. Goes, pardon? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, you go through quite a few counties, but yeah, Dixon County. So this is a great road. Now, it used to be a main artery, north-south, for heading down south or coming back up in Florida. And it did really well till they put the interstate in. And that was just doom for a lot of these little towns along the way. When I first started driving it, you could still see the skeletons of the motor inns and the little cabins, guest cabins, peeking out through the scrub and the trees. And you'd see those crumbling columns from the old gas stations, the ones that would come out and check your oil and wipe your windshield. Y'all don't know anything about that, you young people, but they would do that. They would gas you up, check your oil, wipe your windshield, and gas was 25 cents. And give you green stamps, yeah. And you could get your Coca-Cola out there for a nickel. Do you remember? Okay. Then you'd see these old faded signs, these leaning over, just barely able to read them. It would be for Gator World or the Snakeatorium. And of course, it's all gone now. It's all gone. So you have the highway to yourself, pretty much. It's 65 miles an hour, which means you can go at least 71 and you won't be in trouble. So I'm driving up and down, and the little towns. I got to tell you a little bit about the towns. First of all, I love their names. You got things like Otter Creek and Fanning Springs, which I always want to call Fanny. Fanning Springs. You'll have Salem. You'll have Crystal River. Just all these nice little towns, and there's not much to them now. They're kind of sad. Some are a little bit more prosperous than others, but don't go there to go shopping unless you want guns and ammo, sporting goods. What's the third? Oh, you like flea markets and fast food. There's just not a lot there. Am I right? Yeah, I'm right. So there we go, and the church signs used to tickle me to death. There was the full gospel refugee chapel. Or the, what was another one? There was Forged by the Bible Baptist Church Tabernacle. I mean, you go to any of those, your soul's going to be fixed. So all these old things, I'm driving along, and I drive this back and forth and back and forth. So there I am coming home from Tampa, and it's about 4:30 in the afternoon, and I'm barreling along, have just gone through Salem, and I see something up on the road, beside the road. Now, I have hit a deer, so I'm a little cautious when I see things near the road. So I slowed down a little. And as I got closer and closer, I realized what I was seeing was a little boy and 3 little dogs, and they were playing on a driveway right by the highway, right there. Well, I couldn't stop in time, and it's a divided highway, so I had to go past it and go up till I could make a cut through, come back around, come back up, slow down, and by this time the little boy, about 2 years old, had moved off into a field to the right of the house. Little dogs bouncing around him. And I pulled in the driveway. And when I did, he came bopping over to my side of the car. I rolled down the window, and I smiled at him, and he smiled at me. And he looked Latino. He had that olive skin, big brown eyes, soft brown hair. He was naked, except for a diaper. But clean. He didn't look like, he'd been out wallowing around in the dirt. He was spanking clean, had on that little diaper, and had those little dogs around him. Just as cute, kind of a chunky little kid. You know how some of them are sturdy. I would call him a sturdy boy. Well, there he was looking up at me. And I looked at him and I smiled and I said, "You scared me," and pointed to the road. "Don't play by the road. That's scary. That's dangerous. Don't do that." And I'm talking on, and he's looking at me, but I couldn't tell if he knew what I was saying or not. Well, then he smiled and turned around, and he started walking across in front of the house. Now, the house was typical old Florida house. Wood house, used to be white, now it's kind of gray. Had a screen porch across the front, 3 old tired steps leading up to it. Well, he was walking away, and I'm looking around. There was nobody there. Nobody to watch this little boy. Well, I was incensed. How could they do this? This was wrong. So I took myself out of the car, walked over to the steps, went up and bangity bang banged on the screen door, and I hollered, "Hello? Anybody home?" No answer. I banged again, I called again, nobody. Well, I am upset. So I open the screen door, walk across the porch, and bang on the front door. "Hello, hello? Anybody home?" Well, I was about to give up when I heard somebody mumbling on the other side of the door, and the door swung open, and there stood an older woman. I mean that older than me. She had white hair, and it was all mashed up on one side like she'd been sleeping, had one of those chenille robes, the old robes. And she looked at me and she said, what is it? What do you need?" I said, "Well, what I need is to know who's watching this little boy out here." She said, "What little boy?" I said, "Well, he was right here, and he was playing right by the road, had 3 little dogs with him." And I said, "He went off across the way there." She said, "There's no children around here." I said, "Oh, yes, ma'am. He was right there in your yard. He was right there. I talked to him. He's wearing a diaper, and he's got these little dogs." And she says, "No." Well, about that time, this old rusty pickup truck came rattling into the yard, stopped. The fella got out, an older fella, and he walked up and wanted to know what was going on, and she told him about me seeing this boy. He said, "No, there ain't no kids around here." I said, well, there was a little track leading off to the side over there. And I said, is there anybody living down that way? And she said, yeah, there's a double wide down there. They don't have any kids. I said, well, is it okay if I ride down there? Suit yourself. They were looking at me now like I'd grown a third eye. So I walked back down, and I'm looking for that little boy. Now, they have their house, and right beside the house is a Quonset hut. Quonset hut, for those who don't know, is like this half-cylinder building. It's metal. You see them around the Army a lot. Well, they had one, kind of rusty and old, but they had it right there by their house. So before I got in my car, I went over and walked the way the little boy had gone toward the Quonset hut. I walked all the way around it. It was bolted and shut up tight. So I get back in my car and I start driving down this rutted little pathway, looking and looking and looking. I looked and it's all woods and thick underbrush, except for by the little road there, the trail. I'm trying to see where that boy has gone. I rode until I came to a clearing. There was the double wide. A nice one with a porch and everything. They had 2 basset hounds back there. So lazy they didn't even get up and bark. So I drove into the clearing and I'm looking. I thought, well, maybe somebody's camping and these guys don't know that they're camping and somebody's in here with a camp or a tent or something. But there really was no place for anybody to do that. It was thick woods. I drove all the way around, looking. Finally, I stopped, opened my door, stood in my car doorway so I'd be taller, and I looked and I called. I don't know where he went. I don't know what happened to him. I thought, well, I should do something. I should call the police or the highway patrol or what would I tell them? Yeah, I saw a little boy playing by the road, but he and his dogs disappeared. They'd wonder what I'd been smoking. I didn't know what to think. I was completely flummoxed. So I got back in the car. I took one more drive around, and then I left, driving out, and I headed back to Panama City, studying on it. I wish I could tell you that the next day I went down to the library and did some research and found out that a year ago at that very spot there had been a terrible accident and a little boy and his 3 dogs had gotten hit on the road. That did not happen. I wish I could tell you that the next time I was driving back, I was passed by an old station wagon, and in the back window of that station wagon was that little boy looking back at me. That didn't happen either. I drive by that place still whenever I go, coming and going, and I always slow down and I always look. It has not aged well. The fence has fallen in. The house is still there, but the screen door is, loose, and the Quonset hut is still there, but rustier than ever. I think if you ever have a chance and you go down that road, you come near Salem, you start looking off. If you're heading south, it's going to be on the left. If you're heading north, it's going to be on the right. You're going to see that house. You're going to see, there it is, the Quonset hut and the house, just like she said. And then maybe you'll see him too. End. Thank you. I'm going to step aside. You're not really serious for me to keep talking, are you?
Well, I was just going to say,
have some
yeah.
talk.
No, you're
Okay.
If you want to keep.
No, I want to hear some of their stories. Because, that's how storytellers do. We get ideas from other people telling stories. Oh, that's great. So I can't wait to hear what you're going to tell.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I will tell you this. I will never drive through Salem. And I will not look for the small child, Pat. Oh, yeah, that's the kind of story that gives me the heebie-jeebies right there. So I actually do have a little story. It won't be very long at all, but it goes along. We play this game whenever we travel. My family lives in Louisiana, so it's about a 7.5-hour drive. And you can cover a lot of ground with stories. If I bring my ukulele, my husband gets a 7-hour ukulele concert, and he really loves them. He always asks me to bring my ukulele. But, and when we go through Pascagoula, he gets a rendition of the Mississippi Squirrel Revival. Yes, that's always a popular favorite. That's always a favorite in the van. And one of the games we like to play is church names. And basically what you do with church names is you start out with church. So the church, and you can just start. So somebody yell out something for me. That could be a legitimate part of a church name.
Holy Mother.
Church of the Holy Mother of Concentrated Redemption. Saints. The Church of the Holy Mother of the Concentrated Redemption Saints. I'm trying to think of how to work that in, Geraldine. Church of the Holy Mother of the Redemption Saints. Concentrate. No, we're not getting into denominations now. Concentrate. Wait. We still got Geraldine to figure out here. Concentrated Redemption. Wait, I already forgot. Saints. Saints on the high holy hill. That's how you always have to end it, is on the high holy hill. And you can put in something about baby Jesus or the Holy Spirit or fire. Saints. Yes, saints. Eternal. Anything like that. But basically you want it to be about this long by the time you're finished. Now, my husband and I worked in kids' church for about 15 years. And I've already told you guys, I don't like scary stories. But the people in kids' church knew I loved telling stories. And so we had a Halloween party. The people who ran the kids' church ministry were also park rangers out at Blackwater. So we had a Halloween party out in Blackwater with a campfire and everything, and they said, Rebecca, we want you to tell the ghost story around the campfire. Never told a ghost story. All I know is all ghost stories are scary. There's no really scary and kind of scary. All scary to me. So as far as I knew, it didn't matter how scary it was, because it was just gonna scare me. So the entire day, I researched scary ghost stories, and I've got to get this off. Sorry, sound guy. So I put my heart and soul into finding a ghost story. I don't even remember the story that I told, but it had something to do with ping pong balls on my eyes. We found glow-in-the-dark ping pong balls. We cut them in half and drew eyes on them. And so I'm telling the story, and then I'm supposed to turn around, and when I come back, I've got these crazy ping pong balls on my eyes. I don't know how many of them had to be taken away from the campfire, but the parents still talk about the scary story that I told. They were ready to kick me out of the church because my story was so scary. And I was like, you guys said you wanted a scary ghost story. All I did was tell a scary ghost story. So beware. If you're ever a part of a kids ministry or a kids group and they ask you to tell a scary story to the kids around the campfire, they don't mean a really scary story. No, they mean like a pumpkin story or something. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is read some paper thoughts, except for yours.
I heard it was supposed to be maybe a little scary.
How many should I read, Elizabeth?
Oh, maybe
2 sounds good. I like both of these. One of them I don't quite understand. The first one, I have never really been into spooky or scary. I like to not be afraid. I did not write that. I don't like to be scared. Elizabeth. Yeah, it's like scary movies and stuff. I'm like, why though? There's enough scary stuff in the world. So, and then the second one is, I put my feet in the Gulf this afternoon. Coolest they've been in a long time. So, yes. But does somebody want to tell me why it's scary? And spooky? No? Because, and then a shark came up and bit off my toes. But not really. We just added. There's another basket. All right. So who is our next storyteller? Elizabeth. Hey, and even if you're not already signed up to tell a story, like Pat said, if you get inspired by somebody's story, it makes you think of something funny, spooky, or related to spooky, put your name down. We'll take people telling stories until the very end. And there is a limit. No longer than 5 minutes. Has to be true. Can't read it from a device. It has to be true. My story was true. Okay, here we go.
I wonder if I want to sit. So hi, I do have a spooky story, but I don't like to be scared. So I'm from New Orleans. I grew up in New Orleans, and New Orleans is so family-oriented. But there was a one special aunt that I absolutely adored, my Aunt Annie, and she adored me. I think so, I know she did. She's the kind of aunt. Then it was my mom's sister, so she would take me to visit her quite often and would let me stay there for weekends or whatever. And my aunt didn't drive, so we had to walk a lot of places or take the bus, which is quite enchanting as a kid living in suburbia New Orleans. And she lived with my grandfather, so it was just the two of them, and then her children had moved out. They were older, so I kind of got all of her attention. But she was the kind of aunt that would let you take me to the store, buy me a big jar of olives with the seeds in them, let me eat the whole thing and then drink the juice, like something I don't think my parents would have ever let me do. She also took me constantly to Audubon Zoo, and I saw the animals and hundreds of pictures and everything you can imagine, and Audubon Park, and she would save French bread and let it go stale so that we could feed the ducks, which I know is bad now, but we did that and it was awesome. I would do little skits for her on stage, and we loved each other. So as life goes on, life happens, right? And she gets older and I get older, and she winds up with cancer. And so she has to sell the house that, my grandfather was already passed away, and she sells the house and moves in with her son. And I was living in Palm Beach County at the time, so I would come back and forth to see her. And of course, I talked to her, but life happens, and it was okay. She was older. But I wound up with this big box of hers that had all of her costume jewelry in it, and she had a ton of it. But she also had some nice things that I found in there. And one of them was her mother's ring. So the ring that moms get that have like the birthstones in them? I had her ring, and I wore it for a long time while she had cancer, and then after she passed, and then I wound up giving the whole box to her granddaughter and giving the ring to her son. But I had a connection with her. So at the same time, I happened to be in a yoga teacher training class, Shivananda, and I was in there for maybe 3 to 5 months. I don't remember, but one of the requirements that we had is that we had to go to meditation every day, and it was anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes, and it just depended. But every single morning we were there, almost from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock-ish in the morning, and that was a requirement. So on this given day, now my aunt had been sick, and there were threats she's going to die then. But in my radar, I knew it was happening, and I was at peace with it, but it was in my radar. So in Shivananda, you have to wear a uniform, which as a Catholic schoolgirl, it was fine for me. So white pants, yellow shirt. White pants, everybody, even for meditation at 6, you threw on your clothes and then had to change to go to work. But white pants, yellow shirt. So we're all in the circle, and in this room, there's a candle, and it's an oil candle, and it was filled with oil. The candle's lit, there's a little offering under it, and we're kind of in a circle, and we kind of go down. And I went really deep, and it is the deepest I've ever probably gone. And I start getting into this meditation, and I kind of see all of us in white pants. I don't think I've ever told this out loud without getting choked, so we'll see. But all these white pants and yellow shirts are like kind of going up into the sky. And I'm kind of moved by this, but then I kind of peek a little bit because I hear this guy, John Stirring, and he's relighting the candle, and he's trying to get oil, and he's messing with it because it keeps going out. And I kind of ignore this, and I have my aunt's ring on, and I just kind of rubbed it a lot the whole month, so nothing new. So everybody's going up, and I'm in the sky, and I'm way deep in meditation, and my aunt comes up right through the circle. And then comes my cousin Joanna, and she grabs her hand, and they go. And I am absolutely blown away, and I know for a fact that my aunt has passed away. I know it. I just know it. But I can't figure out why Joanna's there, because there were so many family members that passed. Why would this cousin be there? She had cancer. And I go rush to my house before I go to work, because my mom had promised me that anytime anybody died again, I would get a message immediately. We had had an issue before, so I was supposed to be alerted immediately. I rush home just knowing that on that answering machine, before cell phones, there was going to be a message, and there wasn't. So I'm just numb. So I go to work, and I kind of lose it on my principal, and I go upstairs, and getting ready to teach a class, right? And I turn on my computer, and my brother says, "Are you going to Aunt Annie's funeral this weekend? I suppose you are in New Orleans." And I'm like, "What? She died? Oh my God." And I'm like, so this is real. This really, really happened. And I was connected to this. So I'm thinking, well, what time did she die? Because I can't be that connected to anything, right? And it's spooky to be that connected. And they said, "Oh no, she died at 5:30. And I was like, "Oh, well, then I'm not that connected, because it's 6:30. And then it took me a minute, and I was like, "Oh no, I was on Eastern time, and this is Central time." So it was all true. So I wind up going to the funeral and talking to my other aunt, the mother of Joanna, and I'm like, "Why Joanna? Why would she come here? Why would she take Aunt Annie, not her dad or her mother?" And she said, no, they were really close. She got pregnant. She wasn't married. They were writing. She lived in Georgia, and they had an amazing bond. It makes perfect sense. So I thank you for letting me share. I was very connected. I've never gone that deep again in meditation, because it really spooked me. And all of my friends and family were like, "Well, did you see my dad? Did you see my mom? When you meditate next time, tell me." And I don't know. But anyway, that's my story. It's a little spooky and a little bit of a blessing. So thank you so much.
That was amazing. Thank you, Elizabeth. I've never had that kind of experience, but it's something that has always been interesting to me. Whenever a dear friend or family member has passed away, I dream about them. And not just not immediately, but usually there's a very vivid dream, and I will speak to them, kind of thing. It's never anything huge like swirling lights. It's usually like, hey. But I remember the very first time it happened, I was sitting on a boat, and it was a large ship, and it had there were benches all up and down the way of it, and then there was an aisle that went down them, and I was just sitting on the bench. Did I mention my grandfather had just passed away, and he was former Navy. He was stationed outside of San Francisco during World War II. You know, we had people who guarded our coast, and I look up, and my grandfather's coming toward me. But it wasn't my grandfather the way I had last seen him. It was my grandfather at about 40 years old, and he had his leg amputated before he passed away. And in my dream, he was walking like this. Just the strongest, healthiest that you could even imagine. And I looked up and I said, "Papa." And he goes, "Well, hey, sweetheart," which is what he had always called me. You know, nothing big, but "Hey, sweetheart," and just kept walking. And that was it. He just stopped to say hey to me. And my favorite thing about it, and any of you have ever read the Chronicles of Narnia, in one part of it, they say, I saw her again, but not like the way I last saw her. Not dirty and not scared and not, see, I'm going to cry because it's so amazing. Not dirty and not scared and not afraid, but the way she was meant to be. And that's how I always see, yeah. I didn't write it. That was, now I've forgotten. Thank you. It's like, who wrote the Chronicles of Narnia for 500? So now that's what I always like to think, the way they should be. So how about a scary thought, spooky thought? Yeah. She said, see, I was like, Lewis Carroll. No, not Lewis Carroll. I only have like 20 credits in literature to my name. This must be yours. The scariest spooky thought ever. Student loans. Oh! Keeps her up at night. How am I going to pay that back? I do remember in college, and I'm not saying everybody does this, but my roommates had new laptops and cameras every semester on their student loan. Ghouls. So what's the difference between a ghoul and a ghost or a spirit? A ghoul is corporeal? Yeah. Yes? Yeah, okay. That's definitely scarier than a ghost. All right. Good. These aren't scaring me much. Aiden, did you sign up? Yes. Wait, didn't you sign up? Oh. Sorry, it's Ashley. There we go. And then Aiden. Shake it out. Shake it out.
All right, first timer. So, I think it's important, before I get into the story itself, to give you some context of where it took place. Now, I grew up a stone's throw from the Swanee River off 1998, Miss Pat knows it, Dixie County, in an area of Florida that is largely undeveloped and still very rural to this day. And with the Spanish moss and palmettos and dense brush, it's very easy to have that sense of mystery and just prehistoric oldness in the simple fact of being there. And I think it's also important to tell you, my dear listeners, that I was a voracious reader growing up. I still am when I can. And I had a special interest in stories of the supernatural. Now, this may bring some skepticism to mind for you as the listener, but I promise you this, my story really happened, and it's true. Now, being a big reader, I had an aunt who would travel to UK, Europe every year. She was a history teacher at a Catholic school, and she encouraged my love of reading by sending me books from wherever she was at that year. I was such a voracious reader that in my household, where there was a strict bedtime, my dad, who was a bookworm just like me, gave me special permission to stay up an hour past bedtime as long as I was physically in my bed reading. And this is where the story finds us. On a dark and humid night, wee Ashley curled up in her bed, devouring this big, delicious book about Irish ghost stories. And there I was, just minding my own business, reading, probably with the flashlight. I was a bit of a rebel, too, when I heard it. Outside of my bedroom window, I heard this unearthly wail. It was one of those blood-curdling, gut-wrenching, hair-raising sounds. It sounded just like a woman being murdered outside of my bedroom window. Now, my bedroom in the house was way in the back, towards the back door, and taking a page from our dear friend the possum, I found it prudent to freeze and not move a muscle in case whatever it was saw my shadow through my bedroom window and decided to come get me. So I stayed frozen until I heard it again. That motivated me to leap out of bed and do what I imagine looked like an approximation of the Roadrunner from the cartoons through the house, skidding sideways into the living room where my parents were watching late night TV. Juxtaposed against Jay Leno's monologue, I find myself trying to gasp out the story, and I needed my parents to know that this was not something brought on by my vivid imagination, reading scary stories. This was not a scary dream I had just woken up from. This had just happened, and there was a woman being murdered outside my bedroom window way out in Dixie County. Now, being country folk, we had, at any given time, about 3 or 4 dogs that were given free reign of our acreage that was fenced in. We had a beautiful, lovely, comfortable doghouse for them to stay in, don't worry. And they were going mad barking. They were barking their heads off. My dad, being a reasonable man, heard the dogs, saw my paler than normal face, sheet white, and decided, you know what, I'm gonna go walk the property. He told my mom and I to stay inside, and he grabs his shotgun and he goes outside. I was not comfortable with this. I did not want the banshee to get my dad. But he came back about 10 minutes later. The dogs had quieted down. He goes, you know, I didn't see anything, but there was definitely something out there. I said, all right, but I insist on sleeping in your room tonight, which I had not done since I was a little kid. But when your dad's an ex-Navy SEAL, Vietnam veteran, even banshees really aren't as scary when you have him around. Nonetheless, I made it a point to call my family the next day and inquire about everybody's health, tell them to buckle up, and just generally be careful. Now, a while had gone by, and as you know, younger ones are wont to do once the danger is past, I had largely forgotten about this murderous wail I had heard outside my bedroom window that night. The next night, I didn't hear any banshee, and I kind of went along with my life and my day. Until a few weeks later, I came home from school, and my dad caught me in passing and goes, hey, Ash, I went down to the Jenkins Feed and Seed in Cross City, and I saw my buddy, the deputy sheriff. So I told him what had happened, and I asked him, you know, did you get any other reports, anything weird that you heard? And he said no, but Florida Fish and Game did capture, trap, and release a full-grown Florida panther back down to South Florida, which gave me relief that there wasn't a supernatural entity foretelling my family's death. But believe you me, any time after that I took a walk in those old Florida woods, I kept an extra eye open.
Thank you. That was fabulous, Ashley. And I just want to let you know, as another country folk, people in the country do not put their dogs in the house. I mean, you just don't. You move to the city and you know you're a city folk when your dog lives in the house with you. So there's no shame there. It's just what we do, even if a panther eats them. Not that time. That reminded me, all through high school and college, my favorite author was Ray Bradbury. Anybody out here read Ray Bradbury? Yeah. I remember I was one of my last couple of years in college, can't remember junior or senior year. I'm lying there late at night reading a Ray Bradbury paperback of his short stories, and I get to one. It was probably The Little Assassin or something, which, if you know his short stories, those things were messed up. And I'm pretty sure in that moment, that book went in the trash can, and I have not picked up a Ray Bradbury story since then. That, if you want to be scared, I mean, he has some sweet stories about Mars and about, just pretty much just Mars. Those are the only ones that aren't scary. Everything else. So we got a couple of more things to read. I put the ones I read back in there. You saw that? One time we were doing a raffle, and I was in charge of the raffle tickets, and I put both ends of the tickets into the basket. Yeah? I don't know who won, but it wasn't me. Oh, okay. I think this could be just the thing to give you a fright. Listen for it tonight. That blood-curdling scream in the middle of the... Oh, I did it backwards. That blood-curdling scream in the middle of the night could be just the thing to give you a fright. Listen for it tonight. Oh, it has to be scarier than that. When I was young, I was sound asleep and woke up, and there was a tall man with big shoes. I shut my eyes real tight, and when I opened them, he was gone. Who exactly would have stayed there in the room? Whose was this? That was yours? You didn't leave? Things will get you. THC in the old days was a well-rolled joint. Now it's a gummy. Beware the emojis that move. I am truly scared. I'm gonna look where I think this came from. over here somewhere? No. Okay, who did it since I was so wrong? Nobody's gonna climb this? Okay. Alrighty, so we are still taking applications for storytellers. Still taking applications. Otherwise, we have what we think is going to be our last story. Joshua, did you decide to tell your story? Yeah. Oh, and Aiden. Did you just say you were going to tell a story? Yeah. So do you want to still go last, Rob? Oh, you want to go now? Is it scary? Do I need to leave? Do Elizabeth and I need to leave?
I want to sit because I'm tall and this is small. No, I wanted to go now because this story kind of connects a bit with Ashley's story, because while that was it was what she thought was a woman getting murdered, this is about a child being murdered and me hearing it. So let me start with saying, first of all, that at 20 years old, I'd spent the previous 20 years, being raised in a very loving family. At the same time, being kind of fed a lot of interesting beliefs that created a lot of issues in my life. I've been practicing psychology for over 20 years now, if that tells you anything. And so working that stuff out. But I did. But this was before that. And so I had some issues with paranoia and things like that already. So then I get this call from my dad was a doctor, and one of his colleagues, she was a neurologist, wanted me to house sit while she went out of town for several days. And I was like, heck yeah, go to a doctor's house and house sit. Like, we had a very modest house, we were like very not a doctor's house, which was great. Like, that's kind of how I was raised. So that's one of the things that I never knew the difference, but I knew my dad's friends though. And they had cool houses. This particular lady, she was a neurologist who was a chain smoker, and she was a bit odd when you spoke to her, and so her house kind of reflected a bit of that. It was this small wooden shack out in the woods of Baldwin County. I promise you, it was just down this dirt road in the middle of all these trees. Wood floor, you could see through in certain parts, and so that was me for the next 4 days in that house. And so here I am coming in already paranoid and whatever, and then I'm like, it's pitch dark out there, and I'm in this house, and like, okay, cool, I'm by myself. I actually wasn't worried at the time or anything until, turn out the lights and it was bedtime the first night. And pitch dark, long dirt road, no houses anywhere around. And so I fall asleep, and I'm awoken to murderous screaming. And it was the sound of not an adult. It was the sound of a child. And not that it would not have been bad if it was an adult, but oh my God, it was a kid, and I was just frozen, didn't know what to do. And then I kept hearing it, and it was close. It was within, 15, 20 yards somewhere in the house or under the house or something like that. And so I finally got out of my frozen state and picked up the phone and called the police, and the police came out there about 15 minutes later. Fortunately, there was somebody close, and they come up, and my heart's pounding, I'm just sweating. I'm just like, oh my God, I don't know what's going on out here. But I heard this child scream, and there's some sort of serious violence that occurred here. And the cop was like, I don't know, I'll take a look around, you know. I mean, he kind of saw that I was freaked out and everything, but also at the same time, it seems like he's had this call before. And I'm just kind of not sure what to expect. Like, why isn't he connecting with me and my pain and my fear and my emotion, you know? And but he starts, you know, kind of looking around and everything. And I'm just following, like almost grabbing onto his arm. I'm so scared. There's a murderer out there right in the woods somewhere. And so it was almost as if he knew where to go. Because he walked around to the back of the house. It was up on kind of like this, but a little bit higher, and had a crawl space underneath. And as sure as he's shown his light underneath that crawl space, 2 raccoons ran out from the other side. And I'm like, those are raccoons. That's not a murderer. And he just stands up and laughs and looks at me. And he says, have you not ever heard 2 raccoons during a mating ritual? And I said, no, what does that have to do with a child being murdered? That's exactly what it sounds like, as a child being murdered. And so that brought an end to my saga, but my heart rate did not go down for at least a day, because I knew a child somewhere had been murdered out there. But eventually realized that, yes, that's true. Raccoons during mating, yeah, it gets wild. So, thank you.
Who was afraid he really hurt a child being murdered? Yeah. Oh my gosh. Or you know what I thought? Because those of us who don't like being scared, I think we can imagine scary stuff. I was like, he heard the ghost of a child being murdered. Gosh. Oh, that's terrible. I'm glad it was raccoons. We have raccoons in our backyard that killed all my chickens. They better not mate, is all I'm saying. I don't know if I'll be able to handle that. Paper thoughts, spooky paper thoughts. A toothless, 3-legged, 4-eyed monster. Is that a riddle? Okay. I didn't know if it was like what goes on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs in the afternoon, and 3 legs at night. I didn't know if that's what it was. Thank you. Alrighty, so we have another storyteller, 2 more storytellers. We have Aiden. It just went away. Adeline, Amy, Airnot. I don't know. And Joshua. Who would like to go first? All right.
Okay, so I am a pinhead, which is someone who really loves pinball. And the very first machine I bought was last year in December, and it was from a company called Spooky Pinball, which is why I think the theme will fit. So they're out of Benton, Wisconsin, and they... A little closer? Okay. So, did everybody catch the first part of that story? Pinhead, okay, yeah. So somebody who likes pinball, my first pinball machine was from a company called Spooky Pinball in Benton, Wisconsin, and the machine was Alice Cooper's Nightmare Castle. So I got the Super LE limited edition version, and the day finally arrives where it's being delivered to the house. So I am just overjoyed. So I get out in the front yard as soon as the truck pulls up, and 2 gentlemen come out of the cab, and I'm just running to the edge of the driveway, giddy. He comes out, the older gentleman hands me the paperwork to fill out. while the younger gentleman gets inside the back and starts pulling the machine out. Gets it onto the lift gate, and the Tommy gate comes down. The older gentleman's talking to me about, what's in the box. I said, it's a new pinball machine. And anytime that I talk with anybody about pinball machines or arcade machines, they're just surprised that people are still playing these things and that you could still buy them. Suddenly, our conversation was interrupted when he turned and he said, "Don't come off to the side." And then just like that, a moment of sheer horror as my machine comes crashing off of the dolly onto the street. And the topper that was on top of the box was surrounded in this like wood encasement, and it just shatters all over the place. And so I think I was in shock, honestly. Just rendered speechless. And I almost ran and, tried to stop it from falling, but we picked it up and I'm freaking out. And I'm like, oh God, what do we do now? And so I call the distributor and I'm trying to figure out, what if it's damaged and, I've waited all this time and blah, blah, blah. Happy ending was that everything turned out fine and it was undamaged. The worst of it was the encasing, but still a very horrific story. And that's my story.
That was fabulous. Thank you, Joshua. I imagine that it came to life. Anybody else? I don't need to be scared because it's all right here. Okay, 2 more. 3 more. So, does everybody know what goes on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs at noon, and 3 at night? What? Does everybody know what goes on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs in the afternoon or in the daytime, and 3 at night? I know one person does. Pat, what goes on?
A guy,
A man. A person, a human. 4 legs, crawling, 2 walking, and 3 with a cane. So that's what I was thinking. The toothless, 4-eyed, 3-legged monster sounded like part of that riddle, but I don't know if it was or not. Nobody's claiming that it was. Okay. Is who and what I'm seeing real, or am I insane? I suppose it depends on what you're seeing. Roaches. Big roaches. Little roaches. Flying roaches, black roaches, red roaches, what? Gray roaches. That's about all I've seen are those colors. Aiden, come along. Remember to, okay.
The power name. Hey guys, I'm Aiden. I wish I had a happy story. I guess this is spooky. Let's see. Back when I was in my younger days, like 5 years ago, not that much younger, I was going through a really weird time period in my life. I don't know exactly what was happening. And it wasn't dark in the sense like, oh, like my life is so sad or something. But I guess my thoughts were dark for some weird reason. But so I was waking up every single night with these weird night terrors. These images that I've never seen before, read about, nothing that I could have ever imagined, but I was dreaming them constantly, just waking up in constant fear. To the point where like my parents were like, get out of our bed. Like you don't live in our room. So I was constantly like, hey, come sleep with me, come see me. So I guess at the peak at this time period, I was in this house that always gave me the heebie-jeebies on Pensacola Beach, out of all places. Like, that's a happy place. But I walked downstairs, and we had like a, kind of like a 3-story house, but it's a garage. I walked downstairs, and I turned around. I was like, don't turn around, don't turn around. And there was this man standing behind me. And it was very weird. I froze, and I looked up and down at him, and it's almost like from here down, there was nothing. There was no legs, there was no body, there was no nothing, almost like this black mist. And from here up, he was just this thin man, but he had this big, white, moon-like face and this smile that had such horrible intentions that there was nothing you could do besides just cry of fear. And so I turned around, and I swear to God, I flew up the stairs like I never went back in that garage. And so a couple weeks passed, didn't think of it, I never told anyone about it. And I went to another room, and he was standing there again. And I was like, okay, there's no way that this guy's in my house twice. I must be imagining things. Hence the little card. I'm like, maybe I have a mental problem. Maybe I should see a psychiatrist. Still didn't say anything. He revisits probably 3 or 4 more times. Now I'm like, okay, there's a demon following me. There is something happening. Still don't say anything. And then one night I woke up from these horrid dreams, and our attic turned into a closet, so you can actually walk into the attic, and we had coat racks and everything in there that connected to my brother's room. He never had any issues, but I did. So I'm sleeping, and I'm like, actually, I'm not sleeping at this point. I'm like, there's no way I can go to sleep at this point. I have peaked. There's nothing more miserable. I'm giving up on sleeping, whatever. So I'm like, Mom, please, this is the last night. Come sleep in my bed. Like, I need someone to snuggle with. And she's like, okay, it's a chance for her to sleep with her daughter. And so I had the weirdest dreams of this man standing in my closet all night. The closet door opened, and he's standing there. And I don't know if it was real or if it was fake. But in the morning, she's like, oh my God, I had the weirdest dreams. And mind you, I've never told anyone about this. I was like, okay, what did you dream about? She's like, last night, she's like, I don't know if it was real or if it was fake, but your closet door opened, and there's this man standing there. And he had no lower half, but he had this big white face with the meanest intentions. He just smiled, and he just watched. And then he turned around, and he left. And after that, I've never seen the man again. We've never talked about the man again. But if I start to think about him at night, I do not stay at my house alone anymore. But that's my story.
So here's the deal. You see a guy with a big white face and a mean look, kick him straight between the eyeballs. I'm pretty aggressive like that. So it's like it's all fun and games until you start messing with my head. I don't wear these boots for the fun of it. No. That's my first thought. I'm just like, kick him, knock him down. Whatever you gotta do. Get rid of him. You can text me if he comes, and I'll be like, I'll remind you what you need to do, Aiden. Okay. Always in life, when facing the light, there is shadow right behind you. I happen to have a light behind me. Okay, yeah, that's pretty spooky right there. Do we have another storyteller? Oh, yay. If you've told a story tonight, please sign. It's a waiver type thing. Remember to put if you want to be recorded. I mean, not recorded, but if you want it to be posted on the web, your contact information, your name, your signature. Who's the next storyteller? Kaylee, come on. Kaylee or Haley? Okay. And we need more paper thoughts.
All right. Let me tell you how I got this scar. True story, 100%. This happened about 4 months ago. So a little background. My boyfriend occasionally talks in his sleep. Nothing too weird. Just says different random things. Not too scary. Happens every so often. So we just moved into this new apartment. Not a new night, nothing crazy going on. We go to sleep, completely normal. I wake up to him sitting straight up in bed, just sitting straight up, mumbling, incoherently, can't understand what he's saying. This is nothing new to me, I've seen it before. Maybe not him sitting up all the time, but the mumbling, nothing creepy. So then he gets up, out of bed. He's never sleepwalked before, ever. I've never seen this. He sleepwalks, gets up, goes to the end of the stairs. I live in a little townhouse. If you look to the bottom of my stairs, it's my front door. So he's at the bottom of the stairs just pointing. No. And I'm like, what what's going on? I'm freaking out at this point. I'm thinking somebody broke in. I'm crying at this point. He's just going, no, no. And I just can't understand it. I'm freaking out. I'm like, somebody's got a gun. Somebody's going to come upstairs and kill us. I'm freaking out. And then he looks at me, turns around, and goes, look, look, look. Just saying the same thing over and over and over again. Look, look. And then all I hear is, shh. And he stops. Everything just stops. He turns around, comes back into bed. I'm crying, freaking out at this point. Don't know what's going on. He's like, what's wrong? Why are you crying? Why are you upset? So I cried myself to sleep, so scared. I don't even know what's going on. I wake up the next morning. I start washing my hands. My hand's burning. I look down. I have this giant cut on my hand. I have no idea what it's from. He bites his nails, not from him. Why would I do that to myself? Kind of creepy. But I have a legitimate scar from it. It's a pretty deep cut. I have no idea what happened that night. It's never happened again, but that was enough to really freak me out.
I tell you what, it's getting serious now. I'm a little bit uncomfortable. I don't like it anymore. I would say you should have kicked him down the stairs, but it sounded like he may have protected you. So none of that. James, do you have a story? No? 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 There's nothing else in my basket. We're good? I'm trying to think. I think I told all of my little bitty things in between. Yeah, nothing. Nothing comes into my house. No. Anyway, that was for free. So thank you all so much for coming. Did everybody enjoy it? Were you scared? Yes? A little? Some? No? Thank you all for coming out. We're going to let...
Yeah, we have the judges.
Oh, that's right. That's right. We're not finished.
Yeah. So yeah, we have a judges award.
Do you want to banter?
No, yeah, so I'll just tell you, it just reminded me, but it's funny how we think things are creepy and they're not. But, something happened to a student that was in school with me when I was in 6th grade. So I would have to walk to the pool by myself, and I got scared because something had happened to her, and it was real and it wasn't good. But it was always in my head, especially as a 6th grader. So I'm walking to the pool and I see this man in this Jeep, and it's camouflage, and he keeps following me and following me. So I get so freaked out that, you know what I do? I knock on somebody's door. I'm that scared. I knock on somebody's door and I say, please come in, because some man is following me and I'm scared to death, and I'm very worried. So they bring me in, they bring me upstairs. The man pulls in front of the house, comes in, and I'm like, he's here.
It's his house?
He's here. He's the TV repairman and didn't know where he was going. So things aren't always as scary as they seem, but we sure do amp it up, right? Yeah, so anyway, yeah.
Well, let me tell you what my daddy used to do to us. My husband knows about this. To scare us, we lived in the country, like 50 miles away from the nearest town, in the woods, before there were security lights and everything. My daddy would go outside after dark and stick his face in the window. Do you want to know how many years it was before I could walk by a window at night and look? I'm talking like 25, 30. Only in the last 20 years, probably, have I been able to look out of a window at night. So don't do that kind of stuff to your kids.
So I have one more true one. I was the library media specialist at a middle school for about 12 years. And we would do an overnight in the library for 6th grade girls, because I was crazy. And so teachers and grown-ups, other volunteers would come, and we'd have everybody had campsites, 3 or 4 people in a campsite, and we'd have all these activities going on. And then after midnight snacks, everybody would gather. They'd have their jammies on. They've got their bedrolls, their teddy bears, their pillows, and we would gather for ghost stories. So somehow over the course of time, I came up with the idea. It was a new middle school, and it was built out in the freaking middle of nowhere. It had been a sod farm. And there were all kinds of spiders that were around, those black widow spiders especially. Anyway, so I came up with the story that the reason they built a school in the middle of nowhere was because long, long, long ago, in pioneer times, there'd been a family that lived here. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. There was a mom and a dad and a boy and a girl, and they had a little dog. And they had cleared a little bit of land, and they had a little cabin, and they were just settling in when the Seminole Wars were going on. And one night, the Seminoles gathered around that cabin and came in, killed everybody, and burned the place down. And nobody ever came to bury those people or pray over them. And their bodies eventually settled down into the earth on unhallowed ground. And all the girls are going, and I said, yeah. And so dogs won't hunt here and people won't come here. So the school board got the land cheap, which is why they built the school where they did. And they're all nodding, yeah. I said, but oh, it was horrible. It was terrible. I said, trucks would come out loaded with bricks and blocks or wood, and they would turn over or go off into a ditch. And those guys would have those big machines, and they would be running those saws or something, and off went their hands or flop with their fingers. Oh, they had a terrible time building this school. It was terrible. It was terrible. And one time, everybody's finished for the day. They all load up and they all go home. But Hal never showed up at the house. And so Hal's wife, she calls the overseer, the guy that was in charge, the fellow in charge of this crew, and she says, well, Hal didn't come home. He said, well, he must have gotten a ride with somebody. Maybe they stopped at a bar or something. Well, Hal wouldn't. Anyway, needless to say, after a whole day, they went out looking for Hal. Nobody could find Hal. They didn't know that somehow he had gotten sealed up in the wall of the school. I said, you watch. I said, teachers here, they don't stay late marking papers. I said, those tiles overhead have been known to move. Things have been known to shift and happen. I said, no. Nobody stays late here at this school. And I said, I'll tell you something else. We were here in the library. Now, it was a wing of the school. And I said, some girl went down into the bathroom, closed that door. That family that entered into the earth, they went through changes, and one of the changes that some of them became were sewer worms. I said, and those sewer worms, they can make themselves so thin that they can slip right between connections of a sewer pipe. And when they're hungry, they start following that pipe up and up and up and up. Well, this girl, she goes into one of those stalls, closes that door. And then they start hearing her screaming and screaming. All the girls in there, they're trying to open the door, and the door wouldn't open. Help me! Ice got me! Help! And they couldn't get it. So they run down to the office, and they finally get the janitor, and he comes with a crowbar, and he opens that door. He finally gets it open. But there was nothing left of that girl but her shoes and one little worm going down into the commode. I said, that's not all. I said, you watch where you sit in these classrooms. I said, because there are some other parts of that family that have become electrode-like, and they are in those sockets. And these little tiny slivery things, they want to come out of that socket, come across the floor. They want to get in your shoe and go home with you. I said, you know how sometimes you think you hear something in the closet? You do. Well, I have been talking about Hal, and I've been telling him all this scary stuff about the school, and out of the blue, and that's what happens when you're a storyteller, out of the blue, I said, and you know what? One time I came into the library really early. I unlocked everything. I like to make the coffee and make the teachers welcome and get stuff out for the kids. I said, just as I came in and got my stuff down, I heard the copy machine go, shoo. I thought, well, that was strange. I said, I walked over there, and a piece of paper had come flying out. I said, I picked it up, and I looked at it. I said, it was like a man's face had been pressed against the glass. And that's what I saw on that paper, and then down at the bottom it said, help me, Hal. Well, I had no more gotten those words out. All the girls are quiet now. They're all listening. Well, you know how those copy machines, every once in a while, they come on with the little fan going? It did. Right then, those girls levitated off the floor. Their feet were going just like this. I want to go home. I want my mama. And I had to run around, and the volunteers and the teachers are giving me the bad eye, like, what have you done? It took us forever to calm those girls down. But every time we did it, I'd tell the same story. And that's the truth.
All I have to say is my ping pong eyeball story wasn't anything like that. That's awful. I would have become homeschooled the next day. Never would have darkened the doors of that school again. No!
Winner, chicken dinner.
We've got a winner.
Yeah. Is there something here? Let's shut it.
I didn't open that door.
No. So everybody was lovely. Thank you so much. And yeah, I do want to give a shout out to Emily back there, because she's another UWF person, and I love UWF. As a science teacher or whatever, I've gotten a lot of amazing people that aren't even in the science departments, like Greg, and Chastity is environmental science. But anyway, thank you for being here. She's with a class, right? And with the news or media, Argo News. So anyway, we do have a winner chicken dinner, and it is Ashley. So thank you so much, Ashley. Lovely, amazing story. We have a little prize for you too. I don't have it in a fancy card or anything, but you can come up. If you have another story in you, you're most welcome. So no pressure, but anyway, thank you.
Creepy experience.
A creepy experience?
I do have a creepy experience, and this is a true story. And I don't know what happened. I don't know how it happened, but if you are a student of the supernatural, like I am, sort of part-time, you get into the research. You want to know why things happen to certain people. And one thing that I had found that I always found to be sort of true, and I always ask my girlfriends if they ever experienced anything, is that girls, when they get to be a certain age, before, big changes start happening to them, 13, 14 years old, I'm sure you know what I mean, there are recorded instances of psychic activity. I've only had this happen twice. I'm going to tell you the one that freaked me out the most. Growing up, my family, even though we were country folk, we were not religious, non-denominational. My dad figured we could make up our own mind when we got older. However, I had a good friend that lived in Steenhatchee, Florida, which if you think where I'm from is rural, Steenhatchee is even smaller. It's just a little fishing village. There's not much there. No, they will not, actually. And talk about Church of the Holy Name of the Mother of the River of the First Baptist Church of Steenhatchee. That's where she went to church. And the rule was, if I stayed the night with my best friend Rita, on a Saturday, I had to go to church with them the next day, and that's fine. I was a curious kid, and since it was something I wasn't allowed to do, to me it was actually quite interesting. So we're getting ready to go to the First Baptist Holy Mother Name of Steenhatchee by the river. We get on our church clothes. We get to the church. We go in, and the preacher's preaching about something holy. I don't know. I'm paying attention because, again, I'm like, wow, what's this all about? my friends are all kind of laughing and talking amongst themselves. And then at the end of the service, the preacher says, all right, it's time for the kids to go off to Sunday school. And I was like, oh, what's that? All right, let's go do that. So we go out through this side door behind, I guess it's called a pulpit or whatever. I don't know. And we go out that side door, and there's a cinder block building behind the church where I guess it was like an activities hall or something like that. We start walking to the front door, and these metal poles in front of the door. And I stopped my friend and I said, wait, I think I've been here before. And she goes, there's no way you've been here before. And I said, yeah, I think I have. I had a dream about this place. She goes, what? And I'm like, girl, I'm telling you, I know what's in there. And I said, if you walk in, there's going to be like a little kitchen to the right. There's going to be an open space to the left. And then there's going to be a hallway with little rooms. And in one of the rooms, there's a bed with like a checkered quilt. And there's an old-timey school desk. And her eyes got about the size of silver dollars. And she goes, come with me. And we walk in the front doors, and I stop, and I'm kind of freaking out because to the right is a little kitchen area. To the left is a big open activities area, and I can see a hallway. And I did not want to go down that hallway because I'd already been down it, apparently. And we walk down the hallway, and there are little rooms sectioned off for the smaller children to go in. And one, I guess, was like a quiet room, and there was a little child's bed with a patterned quilt on it. And we go to the next room, and there were these old-timey school desks that I guess the kids sat in and learned, and I got about that far and said, you know what, I'm done. I'm good with this Sunday school bit. I'm going to go back with the adults. I'm going to get some cookies. I'm going to get some juice. Faulkner out. And that was kind of the freakiest thing that's ever happened to me. Swear to God, it's true. So, thank you.
That was awesome.
Yeah. So thank y'all so much again. I forgot to mention we did have snacks and drinks over there. I'm so bad at that. And Andrew's got we have all kinds of swag, like all kinds of amazing art, actually, because some of the Be Loud people have created it. We have new T-shirts. Andrew's got one of them on. So anyway, that stuff is there. We have amazing events coming up. We have one tomorrow night. Again, 6-piece jazz band. John Milham's put a band together. Musicians are from New Orleans all the way to Pensacola, actually. We have some locals. So I do thank you for coming. I do ask, yes, Geraldine? Yes, absolutely. Thank you. The date is, I don't know where my cheat card. November 7th. It's called Growing Freedom. It is very close to Veterans Day. So freedom, whatever that means to you. But in my mind, I started out thinking about Veterans Day. We have a speaker coming. His name is Scott, and he is a veteran. So we have another speaker, and it's kind of nice. This is the first time, and I loved it. And thank you so much, Pat. That was awesome. It's really amazing to have a professional storyteller. It's probably one of the first that I've really been around. So, well, yes, and I have tips from you. I can think now, and your animation and it's amazing. So I really thank you for being here, and I hope that you all will come back. And for me personally, I'm amazed that people can. Hello. I'm amazed that people can actually just stand up here and tell a story off the cuff, because honestly, even my story, I had to practice it several times and record it and make sure my minutes were okay. So I really do appreciate people that are just naturals at that, because it's not a gift, but I love it. And anyway, so I thank you all so much, and please come back and please tell your friends, and thanks for coming to the garden. We do have volunteer hours as well. So if you're into gardening or painting, or we have so many things that we want and need around here. So, and ideas are always one of those as well. So please introduce yourself to somebody that you don't know before you leave, because there's a lot of new faces here that I don't know. So I thank you for coming, and make sure you meet somebody new before you go. Thank you. And thanks, Becca, and thanks, Joshua and Andrew and everybody, and thanks.